That's Jimmy Stein. I'm Clint Lamb, and this is the Cover Crimson YouTube channel. Jimmy, we were just talking off screen, and I immediately said, you know what? Based off of the point you just made, we need to go ahead and hit record and start talking about some of this stuff because I think it was such a great point. We were talking about the AP poll that was just released, and we'll be getting into the scrimmage stuff. Trust me, that's coming. But the point that you made about that, can you share that with everybody else, and then I'll react to
Sure.
it?
Sure. It's just, it's everybody's going to have different perceptions of things. And here's two ways to look at Alabama being 8. It is a fact that that's the lowest Alabama has been ranked in the preseason AP poll since 2008. And a lot of Alabama fans are going to focus on that and say, gosh, it's the lowest. It's the Saban era is over. It's not, we're just not what we were. Okay, that's fair because those are facts. This is the lowest Alabama's been ranked since '08. But here's another fact: the national media that doesn't live and die with Alabama football like all of us do every single day, the national perception of Alabama is that's a playoff team. Because if you finish the regular season number 8, you're in the playoff. It's very difficult to to imagine that. Now, one point though, last year Alabama, people don't remember this. Alabama finished inside the top 12 in the college football playoff committee. They had Alabama in the top 12. It's just that two teams from outside of the top 12 leapfrogged Alabama because they won their conference, thus knocking Alabama out of the top 12. So, but anyway, that's a different subject. But the point is, there's a lot to chew on today, both for the glass half empty and the glass half full crowd. The glass half empty has this is the lowest we've been since '08, man. And the glass half full crowd is even the national media says this is a playoff team.
That the reason that I thought that was such a brilliant point, because even me, and this might sound obvious to others, but I think I'm still in the mindset of 4-team playoff. Because when I see number 8, I think, man, they don't have Alabama doing as much this year. Like that's kind of where my mind initially goes seeing that. But you're 100% correct. A lot of people have said getting back to the college football playoff, that's step one. A lot of people want them to perform in the playoffs. They want them to get to the national championship, and maybe even some fans' expectations are they win the national title. But I think step one is getting back to the college football playoff under Kalen DeBoer, and then seeing what happens from there. Seeing how they perform. They performed pretty well against Texas to reach the national championship when he was at Washington. So if you can start catching some of that magic and doing well, but it's such a good point because the step that everybody, it's the biggest obstacle is getting there. Guess who was 7th ranked in the college football playoffs last year? I believe they were 7th or maybe they were 8th, but Ohio State, right? Weren't they down there in the 7 or 8 range, if I'm not mistaken? They might have been 6, but being in that top 8, you have a shot. It's not an easy road, but you have a shot. And so I thought that was such a phenomenal point. And based off of what we're hearing about Alabama's scrimmage, which was the first scrimmage of fall camp, you would expect a little bit of rust. You would expect some mistakes. From everything that people have said and we're hearing and everything else, it's like, I don't know that there was a whole lot of mistakes. It's like they're in a pretty good place as far as being pretty sharp. Here's some of the first things that I'll go ahead and tell you that I heard. One, offense is ahead of the defense, which I think is surprising a lot of people. There was a business-like approach. The focus in the scrimmage, very focused, very physical. And also, I got a text last night. I didn't talk to the person I normally talk to with these scrimmages until late last night, and they weren't at the scrimmage. So I was going off of secondhand information. In the past, I've kind of gotten firsthand in some of these instances, but one of the things that they kept telling me that they heard was just how impressed they were with the team for the people who were in attendance. And then I hear Greg McElroy today on Mac and Cube, and he's saying the exact same thing, where it is this: everybody walked away very impressed with where they're at. I think that bodes extremely well for Alabama, Jimmy.
And what it the word I use to describe this team, which explains all of that, I think, this word might surprise some people that aren't as close to the program as we are, and the listeners to your show are, and that's that this is a veteran team. It doesn't seem like that to outsiders because the quarterback is new. The quarterback's never started a game, and that's sort of the focal point of every football team. Is they look at the quarterback first and they see a guy who hadn't started, and then calling it a veteran football team sounds sort of hollow after that. But that's not the case. This is a very veteran team, and this is how veteran they are. If you projected a lineup, and we could do that today or some other show, and we've done it all summer, frankly, both of us on this show. You project the starting lineup on offense and defense. There are only 2 non-juniors and seniors in the lineup. 2. Now, obviously, a lot of freshmen, sophomore, they're going to play, and they're going to play with the ones, and they're going to rotate in. But in terms of your actual starters, the only 2 non-juniors and seniors are Ryan Williams and Zabian Brown, who are veterans themselves because they're returning full-time starters from a year ago. This is a highly veteran team. And when I read and hear the same things you have about and what GMAC said on his radio show with Cube, that there weren't mental mistakes, that they were sound, that both sides of the ball, everyone walked away impressed. What immediately comes to mind for me, Clint, is, well, this is a veteran football team. A lot of older kids, a lot of kids who have played a lot of football, who are juniors and seniors.
That is spot on. And it's a great point. Like across the board, and here, this is anybody in college football right now. Like, this idea, and Greg McElroy on his, what is it, Always College Football, I think is the name of his show. He was saying his biggest concern was, I think, like the depth, and they don't have the depth that they used to have, and last year they were kind of riddled with injuries, and that's true, and it was both some pretty key season-ending injuries, but on top of that, a lot of guys were banged up, and I don't think the average fan knows just how banged up a lot of these guys were playing last year. But I'll kind of push back on that a little bit because I do think they got some depth at a lot of positions. They don't have depth at every position, and I fully acknowledge that. And if they have injuries hit those positions, yeah, it can get a lot more difficult, and Alabama could even be in trouble. But to say that the rest of college football is not dealing with that exact same thing,
yeah,
Georgia's going to be short on some positions as well. I don't think they can go 3, 4, 5 deep on the edge. They had to go to the post-spring transfer portal to add more bodies there, and those bodies are going to be part of the rotation. They're going to be heavily relied on guys because they don't have a lot of depth. They didn't add 5 or 6 of them. They just added a couple. So, Georgia's deal, if they get injuries at the wrong spot, Georgia's in trouble too. And so, this idea that this is the old Alabama and just every position is just stacked, I think that there is talent at every position. But, like at tackle, a couple of 5 stars were, top 50 recruits and Jackson Lloyd and Michael Carroll. But if you got to turn to them, you don't know what you're going to get in the first season. I think they would probably get better over the course of the season. But, more than likely, you would be kind of in trouble. So Alabama is still, relative to the rest of college football, they're right there in the conversation, Jimmy.
No, the depth point is a exact, come back to what GMAC said. Who has depth? In the age of the transfer portal, where if you're a 2 at Alabama or a 2 at Georgia or a 2 at Ohio State, you're frustrated because you're probably a 4 or 5 star prospect who's always been the star of the show, and now you can't get on the field and start, so you leave. And then what are you left with? Your starters, and now all the backups are freshmen and redshirt freshmen because everyone else in between leaves. I say all the time about the transfer portal. What populates the portal is, in the power forward, and everybody's situation is different. Alabama's situation is not like South Alabama's, but in an Alabama or Georgia or Ohio State or Texas, you have your starters and you have your freshmen and redshirt freshmen. Everyone in between is either in the portal or heavily considered it because they're not starters and they've been there more than a year or two. They're ready to start. So the depth is left. For the most part, everyone's depth is those freshmen and redshirt freshmen. No one's got, and heck, I'm not even really sure if it's not a little revisionist history to suggest that in the old days, Alabama had second teamers who had started multiple games and were proven depth. I don't know that anyone's really ever had that. Now I do know the depth situations change for everybody, including Alabama. You can't survive a bunch of injuries, and I won't go off on the rant right now, but it's a rant that's been building with me over the summer. My going on a tirade, and that's that Injuries are a part of football. I heard Devontae Adams the other day, one of my favorite quotes of the summer. I've never heard this before. Can't believe I hadn't heard this quote before, but I'm going to use it all the time now. Devontae Adams said, if you play 17 NFL games, there is a 100% chance of injury. A 100% chance. And college football is really no different. Everybody gets banged up. Everybody. If you're not getting banged up, you're probably not playing hard enough. I mean, everyone gets banged up in this sport, and some people get injured and they can't play anymore. But what's frustrating is when you have too much of that, your expectations for what the team can accomplish has to change. And for whatever reason in football, I don't think we do that enough. We kind of set an expectation before the season starts based on the anticipated lineup. And based on the anticipated lineup, the Associated Press put Alabama number 8 today. They think, hey, this is the 8th best looking lineup in the sport, so we're putting them at 8. Well, if you told that same Associated Press voters that Caden Proctor, James Smith, Deontay Lawson, Ryan Williams, and Xavier Brown were all hurt and can't play this year, Alabama wouldn't have been number 8.
That's right.
They'd have been further down. And if Alabama loses guys of that ilk, then that's what's going to happen. But it seems like with football too much, we kind of set our expectations and don't change them. But the fact of the matter is, injuries dictate so much of this game. And it dictated the scrimmage this weekend a little bit when you didn't have a James Smith, you didn't have a Jaden Roberts. Lazier Brooks is still, out, not a full participation. Deontay Lawson, probably not 100%. I'm not even sure Keon Sabb's at 100% coming off his injury from a year ago. So these injuries and dings, I know no one likes to talk about it in the offseason, but they almost dictate what happens during the season.
A perfect example. I would still say Alabama was coming off of a national championship in 2017. 2018, they made it to the national championship. 2020, they won the national championship. But what was the year in between that? It was 2019. And what happened? Alabama loses Tua, against Mississippi State. You have to turn to Mac Jones, and actually got really good play there. But the one that not enough people talk about is losing Dylan Moses before the season started, then you losing Joshua McMillan, and now you go from having 2 veteran players. One of them is the star of your defense to having 2 true freshmen. And if you don't think that didn't make an impact against LSU, it absolutely did. So, this drop off that we talk about, having to turn to freshmen, Alabama got serviceable play out of Shane Lee and Christian Harris that year. They really did. But they didn't get Dylan Moses and probably even Joshua McMillan type of impact just due to their veteran, had been around, had seen some football, played a lot of football, understood those moments. And so that ended up impacting Alabama's season. Went to 3 national championships in 4 years. The one year they didn't was the year where you lose your best player defensively, and then over the course of the season, you lose your best player offensively in Tua. So, this has been going on, or even during the peak Alabama years under Nick Saban. So go ahead.
No, absolutely. So that's that was during a period of time when you had, quote, depth, and it was before the portal as we know it today, and Alabama still couldn't survive it.
That's 100% right. And that's so, and so what you've got to get, Jimmy, is one of the signs that I think helps is like Ohio State last year, and I couldn't tell you all the freshmen that contributed and helped them, but I know Jeremiah Smith did. And he elevated that wide receiver room that was already going to be really good and made it one of, if not the best wide receiver rooms in all of college football. But like one of the things that I look at is, okay, who did a good job of maintaining their roster? God didn't have a bunch of guys leave for the NFL who could have returned. Alabama could, they checked that box. But on top of that, you bring in a freshman class, and where are you starting to see some guys? It's like, man, we're hearing a lot about Dijon Lee. He improves the depth, and I think he would be impactful depth if he had to play. I think Ivan Taylor can help the safety room. I think Justin Hill can help the Wolves. If he was forced into action, would he be without growing pains? No, but I still think you could get serviceable play out of him, and then as he gets more experience, would probably become more consistent. But like Latsier Brooks, if you need help as far as the wide receiver room, Keelan Russell, he's still a ways away. When you start talking about quarterback threes, which is what he is, in my opinion, right now, across college football, I don't know if you get too many of Keelan Russell's talent. So it's like this combination of factors is what I think makes Alabama extremely competitive. I just think that voters, when it comes to the AP poll, they have a hard time moving past we don't know what you got at quarterback. And so much is dictated based off of that. And there's this negative perception with Ty Simpson because of the inconsistencies with Jalen Milroe and the inability to overtake that job. And so there's this, oh, he must not be that great. And if Alabama's not that great at quarterback, like it doesn't matter how good they are everywhere else, might not. But I mean, wins. Okay, JJ McCarthy, like they ran that offense through their run game. I mean, they went that entire game and didn't throw a pass. I mean, it's like, you talk about Will Howard last year. Yeah, he was a good player. Wasn't he an elite quarterback? Absolutely not. Like, when's the last time Stetson Bennett with Georgia, 4th round draft pick, hadn't done anything on the NFL level yet, was not probably considered one of the elite quarterbacks across college football, especially from a talent standpoint. When's the last time it took absolutely elite quarterback play to win the national championship? I would say it was probably Mac Jones in 2020, Joe Burrow the year before. So, I don't think it's as critical of a factor as some people perceive it to be, but also I'm a much bigger believer in Ty Simpson than probably people who are not keeping up with the program as much.
Oh, those are awesome points, especially love though. And I think Ty Simpson can be Will Howard at minimum. It's kind of almost like a floor for him. I would just say that Will Howard had played quite a bit of football, not Ohio State, but he was an experienced guy. You know, I was asked earlier on another show, what should we expect Ty to look like? And the guy that I think that Alabama fans are very familiar with, that I think Ty will look like as a player, is Bo Nix, because they're so similarly sized with similar athleticism, sons of coaches, by the way, both of them, similar arm talent skill wise, 5-star and a 5-star. And I think they're in so many ways they're a lot alike. But here's where they're nothing alike. Bo Nix started something like 61 games in his college career, some number that would have boggled the mind of any older college football fan back when, you used to only play 10 games a year and maybe an 11th one in a bowl game. I mean, Bo Nix started 61 games. Ty Simpson is starting his first game in Tallahassee, his first one. So when I say Ty Simpson looks like Bo Nix, I'm comparing the athletic package, the athleticism, the feet, the arm, the weird coincidence that they're both coaches' sons. They're both 5-stars. They're both like literally 6'2", 217, like down to the pound. They're like the same size and at the same age. But Bo Nix, tremendously experienced. Ty Simpson gets his first start in Tallahassee in year 4. So there's going to be some bumps in the road for Ty. There has to be. By definition, it's going to be a bumpy road, probably in those road games. It is for everyone. Ty's not going to be some exception to the rule. Even Peyton Manning in his year 1, now he was a true freshman then, it didn't go great all the time. So how Ty responds to those bumps in the road is going to really probably tell the tale for Alabama in 2025.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it, man. And, so according to Kalen DeBoer, after the scrimmage, the timeline for naming a starter is going to be, after scrimmage number 2, which is next weekend. So, by the time that next Monday rolls around, Alabama, more than likely, is going to have its starting quarterback. And we think it's going to be Ty Simpson. Now, what I will say is one of the big issues that not only I know that Austin Mack had it because I saw him have it in the 8-day practice, but also people that I was talking to back during the spring, I know that this was very prevalent, and that was having the turnover-worthy plays where it's like not all of them were capitalized on by the defense, but he was turning the football over, and there were other opportunities. He was giving the defense chances. One of the things that Kalen DeBoer has talked about following the scrimmage was how much the quarterbacks have protected the football. No interceptions in the scrimmage, only 3 or 4 total throughout all fall camp up to this point. When you talk about this benefiting guys, obviously that helps Ty, but I think based off of what I was seeing from Austin Mack, I don't know if it benefits anybody more than Austin Mack, because if he's protecting the football, the ability that he brings to the table, you would see the upside on a lot of plays. It's evident. It's just you can't do some of the things, some of the back-breaking things that he was doing. If he's doing a better job of taking care of the football, I'm not saying he's going to be Alabama's starter. I still think it's going to be Ty Simpson. I just think it's very possible. I've kind of gone into this thinking Keelan Russell was going to be eventually quarterback number 2, and he's going to be the one getting the mop-up duty reps. If Austin Mack is playing within the offense and he's not turning the football over, he's a dangerous player in himself. And so I think Alabama, once again, when you start talking about national championships, they've got one. I'm not going to say he's one of the better backup quarterbacks in college football, but I would say that he was definitely be somebody that you could trust if you had to turn to him, whether it be short or long term.
He's promising, and one thing I'd say about Austin, everybody develops at a different rate. And if Ty has a great season, and I think he will, if Ty has a great season, and people say, well, why wasn't he playing before? Maybe he was a year 4 guy. Heck, Jake Coker didn't become national champion Jake Coker until year 5. Year 4, he couldn't beat out Blake Sims, who was a converted running back. And then in year 5, Jake Coker was a quarterback of a national championship football team because it took that long for that guy. Other guys are ready in year 1, like a Trevor Lawrence. I mean, but those are sort of unicorns. Everyone else progresses at their rate. For Austin Mack, it's year 3. That's sort of time, Austin. I mean, you do still have time. It doesn't have to be now, but it's getting about that time to where you have to at least prove that you're ready to play. And when I hear, like you said, to your great point about him not turning over the ball and protecting the ball, that's exactly what that means in terms of ready to play. Because there's 3 types of quarterbacks: those that win you the game, those that keep you in the game, and those that lose the game. You can't put a lose the game guy out there. And a lose the game guy is a fumbling guy, a turnover the ball guy. That's a lose the game guy. Your team can't do enough to make up for all that when you're playing against good football teams. So the fact Austin Mack's not turn over the ball is extremely promising. And it could mean that maybe in year 3, which is a typical time for young quarterbacks. One final point about Austin Mack. Remember, he's a reclass guy.
That's right.
So as much as we say he's year 3, in so many ways, this is a year 2 for him. Because if he had completed high school in the normal fashion, he would be a redshirt freshman this year and not a redshirt sophomore. That probably cost him a little developmentally, frankly, that 1 year where he could have been a starting quarterback against high-level California high school football probably set him back a little bit. So I'm not a huge fan of reclass. I can already hear y'all yelling at me, Ryan Williams. Well, if they were all Ryan Williams, I would have a different opinion. But I think Ryan is sort of the exception to the general rule that I'm not huge on reclass guys. But I think as it becomes more common, there will probably be more and more like Ryan. But as of right now, I'm not sure it's not for everyone. But let's see if I do. I'm with you, Clint. I think Austin Mack is the number 2, at least in the early part of the season, and he's going to have to mess it up to get leapfrogged by the true freshman.
I love the point about him being, he was a reclassified guy. So he's technically going into his sophomore year from an age standpoint.
Correct.
And then also, I love the point about it would have actually, a lot of people think, oh man, he's got a whole other system, a whole other year in a college system. That should be beneficial. In some ways, from an adjustment standpoint, it is, but from a rep standpoint, it is not. Because, even Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb have mentioned, I mean, he just really didn't get a whole lot of practice reps. And before this offseason, he was a guy, I mean, he was not threatening Michael Penix Jr., certainly. And he was not the backup. And so he was kind of so far back as far as the opportunities that he was getting, where it's not like him being in college for an extra season at this point is really benefiting him. In some ways, I would actually say it's probably hurting him because he has less reps as a quarterback than a lot of other guys. So that just speaks to, the fact that he's still not a complete product, but you're starting to hear if he is going into what I would view as like a sophomore season, when you start hearing about them making less mistakes, that's the progress, because the playmaking ability is there. He's a big body guy. He's more mobile than you would think for a guy his size, and he can sling the football. So once again, I'm not saying he's going to overtake Ty Simpson, but I am saying that it's going to be harder for Keelan Russell to be Alabama's backup, especially in the early stages. But one of the things that we've heard about Russell, somebody that I talked to before the scrimmage, they said that he is exactly where the coaching staff wants him to be. Like, as far as progress, their coaching staffs are a lot more realistic than on their players than fans. Everybody just assumes that it's plug and play NCAA football on an Xbox, and it's just that's not how the real world works. And also considering what he went through this offseason, I mean, just that would definitely hurt a lot of people as far as being a distraction and stuff. And from everything that we've heard, he has gone about this entire offseason with an understanding that he's probably not going to play in his first year. He's worried about getting better and learning how to play this game at a high level. And I think that that's going to benefit him down the line. But right now, Ty Simpson, accurate, consistent, Austin Mack cutting down the turnovers. Like the quarterback, I mean, everything that you want to hear about your quarterback room, you're kind of getting from at least what we've heard and what Kalen DeBoer has said. We'll move on to the running backs, which I think is another very interesting conversation. And before we talk about them ourselves, I wanted to pull up Kalen DeBoer's answer.
With the offense, what do you see from the backs today from a run game standpoint?
Yeah, I thought Jam started out really well. I think the offensive line did a nice job creating some seams for Jam to hit. Got to the second level, broke a couple tackles. I thought it was one of the better showings I've seen Jam have in a scrimmage. And then, Daniel Hill is a guy we're getting more and more comfortable with. He's big back, but I think he's deceiving when it comes to what he does from a skill set standpoint because he can catch the ball in the backfield. Dre has been consistent all camp long. Thought he poured a couple runs up in there. Did a nice job. Maybe when there's not even something there, just moving the pile and getting those 3-yard gains that are important to setting your offense up for good down and distances. Rich, continues to do his thing too. So all of them, I think Jam, certainly had the best day, and that's been consistent. I feel good about all of them in pass protection, first with their responsibilities and the ability to go up there and execute too and get the job done. With blitzes and things like that, our running backs doing a good job, and when they get out, they've been effective pass catchers as well.
All right, Jimmy. So first of all, I thought it was important that he mentioned multiple things. All of the guys they feel comfortable with as far as pass protection, understanding what to do and being able to go out there and execute it. So when you talk about, are there any guys that are going to be held back by their inability to keep the quarterback upright? I don't think that exists relative to the guys he actually mentioned, by the way, which he only mentioned 4 players. So that's one. And then 2, he feels like that they got some guys that can make plays out of the backfield as a pass catcher as well. That's another element to it. So that's what you call a true 3-down guy, a guy that can tote the rock and do all that, but also pass protection and pass catching are other elements where they can stay on the field and don't have to be limited to early down work. What kind of are your thoughts on what he said about the running backs?
Very encouraging, especially as it relates to Jam, who's almost certainly going to be the principal back, or certainly going to start out the year as RB1. He's earned that, and the fact that he's had a good spring and a good fall, I'm not surprised at all to hear that he's doing well. One thing to say about him in terms of being realistic, I mean, I bring up this stat all the time. It's sort of a downer stat, but it needs to be said. We've seen Jam Miller play football for 3 years. He's been good, but he hasn't been great. He hasn't been awesome. As a matter of fact, every starting running back in the Saban era, every one of them, going all the way back to 2008, has a better career yard per carry number than Jam Miller. Jam would be dead last or tied for last compared to all the starting backs of the Saban era. That sounds bad. It sounds like, oh, that's not good. But here's a couple things to remember. First of all, his career yard per carry number is 5.1 yards. That's not terrible. He's averaging 5.1 yards per carry. That's not terrible. He's just on a list of phenomenal backs, multiple Heisman winners, in fact, and even guys that didn't win the Heisman who were pretty good, like TJ Yeldon and Eddie Lacy and Najee Harris. These were phenomenal college football running backs. The guy that he's actually tied with at the bottom of that stat that I just shared, he's actually tied at the bottom. The other guy he's tied with having a low compared to the others career yard per carry number, Brian Robinson. B-Rob, I would say through his first 3 years was good. Was he great? No. As a matter of fact, a lot of people might not remember this, but heading into the 2021 season, B-Rob's senior year, when he inherited the starting running back job from Najee Harris, there are a lot of questions. Like, is he good enough? He doesn't look good enough as all these previous Bama backs. He seems pretty average. But what happened? He had a great senior year. He rushed for 1,000 yards. He helped lead Alabama to the playoffs. In fact, I would say B-Rob almost single-handedly beat Cincinnati in the semifinals. He had a great game against the Bearcats that launched Alabama into the national championship game that year. Then he would go on to become a day 2 draft pick and the starting running back for the Washington Commanders in the NFL. I think Jam, who doesn't remind me of B-Rob as a player in terms of stylistically or size, but he does remind me of B-Rob's career arc, where through 3 years he's played quite a bit. We've seen a lot of him, but going to his senior year, it's fair to say, I'm not sure he's as good as these previous guys, but given the chance his senior year and given the offense sort of built to his skills, last year's run game was built around Jalen Milroe, not Jam Miller. It was built for Jalen. This year's run game is going to be built for Jam. And I think we could, maybe it's a little wish casting, but I think we could see a senior season for Jam Miller similarly to what we saw from Brian Robinson in 2021.
I think that is very fair. And there were questions about Brian Robinson entering that 2021 season. And for Jam Miller in particular, like, you know, think back to where we all thought he would be by now, because when he was going through his freshman season, he wasn't a consistent part of the rotation. He wasn't getting meaningful action, but when he was coming in at the end of games, we were all like, this guy's a dude. I mean, he was playing some pretty damn good football for being such a young player. And then, you know, the last 2 years, I think it's difficult to know who he is as a player in the offenses that he was playing in, where, you know, the quarterback and how the run game was funneled through him, whether it be the offensive line, the inconsistencies and the struggles there. I think the play calling, this lack of commitment to the run game for whatever reason. Now, he compensated and he could still be an impactful player because of what he does in the passing game. He's by far your best pass protection running back, and that's been the case for a minute. Secondly, his ability to not only be a guy to the backfield who can catch the football and make plays, but he's also a guy who can split out wide, get him on jets and motions, do different things with him to kind of manufacture some touches or put him in motion like they did against Georgia, where you created that touchdown catch for him. I mean, that was just a beautiful play design. And I think that having that type of player who can strain defenses in that way is also beneficial. You know, he's kind of got a high cut frame. He's a big guy, but high cut frame. I think as far as elusiveness and shiftiness, I wouldn't say he's not Josh Jacobs. Like that's not how he wins. He's more of like a one cut guy, but the explosiveness, the long speed, you know, he's got a low center of gravity. I think he's a much more powerful runner than people give him credit for. I just think that, you know, I'd like to see a little bit more creativity if possible, but I think, you know, there's a little bit of some hip stiffness. Like, I don't think, once again, I just think that there are going to be limitations, but not every running back has to have that. So it's just how he wins. And I think he's a good player. And I think he's kind of being set up with the way that they're talking about him. When Ryan Grubb was asked, hey, how's the run game looking? Jam Miller. I mean, it wasn't even like the question. They didn't say who's standing out. They just said, how's the run game look? And his answer was Jam Miller, or at least initially. That told me everything I needed to know. He is so far and ahead of everybody else, in my opinion, where, you know, people need to get used to the idea that he's probably going to be getting 13, 14, 15 carries a game. It's a matter of what happens behind him, which is what I want to talk about next, because the assumption has been Richard Young, and I understand it. Former top 100 recruit, has some talent, has some power. I think there's been some limitations as far as the pass protection, but once again, listen to Kalen DeBoer. He said all those top 4 guys, they don't have to worry about them knowing what to do or being able to execute it. So he's improved on that front, which we had heard that he had improved. But, you know, I think when you start talking about Daniel Hill and Draylon Washington, what I'll say is, you know, I feel like Richard Young and Daniel Hill, they don't win the same way. I think you can do way more with Daniel Hill. But I think when you break down what they do well to kind of bare bones, I think it's power. It's like a power style of player. Okay, well, then you got Draylon Washington, who I think provides more juice, a little bit more wiggle, can certainly impact as far as, a pass catcher out of the backfield. I think he's probably the most elusive guy in the backfield, out of the backfield that they have. So it's like, I think that, do you get Jam Miller, who does kind of do everything, and then 2 power profile guys behind him? Or do you go with a guy who can provide a little bit of everything as well in Draylen Washington? I understand people having Richard Young RB2. I think RB2 to RB4, you can go in almost any direction. I would probably say the least likely is Draylen Washington being the number 2. But I think him being one of the quote unquote 3 who are going to be pretty consistently involved in the rotation, I definitely think he's in that conversation. It's a matter of determining, okay, who's RB2 in that instance? Is it Richard Young? Is it Daniel Hill? Or do you think maybe that Alabama could use 4 running backs, which is quite a lot?
Yeah, using 4, my first concern about using 4 is now Jam Miller's not getting enough snaps. I mean, I think, I think one thing you've got to do is play Jam a lot. And I think running backs getting a rhythm, and especially someone like Jam, who is that 3-down guy, like you talked about before. Jam does it all. He's a first, second, third down guy. So I think 3 is sort of a max number, but you're right about being RB2 through 4. I wouldn't know if interchangeable is the right way to say it, because that makes it sound like they all have the same skill set. I like the fact that they have different skill sets, that Daniel Hill is this very different unicorn type guy. He's humongous. He's like 240 pounds or more. He's huge, but he has the best hands of any of them, which is very unusual. And then you have Rich Young, who reminds me a little bit of Jam. I mean, I think he's sort of built like Jam. He just hadn't played as much. He's been banged up some, and he's had some opportunities. This is a year 3 for Rich Young. He's kind of getting into now or never territory. Running backs are a little different than other positions. I think sooner with backs, and there's fewer stories about late bloomers at backs. Yeah, I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure, as I said that, all of y'all, shouted out one name of a late blooming running back. I'm just saying it happens less there than it happens, like, for instance, linemen, who there's the Hall of Fame is littered with offensive linemen who blossomed late in their lives. But running back, you sort of know quickly. So, if Rich Young is listening to the show, and I hope he is, because it's a great show, it's sort of like, hey, you might be RB2, and I hope you get your shot, but you're going to have to be fending off Daniel Hill and Dre Washington. They're showing up to play. I think there's going to be tremendous competition for snaps behind Jam. I don't know that Jam's a part of that. I think Jam, from the way the coaches have talked this fall, Clint, I think Jam sort of separated himself from the other guys. He's clearly their guy. And then behind him, there's these different skill sets, these different guys. There's probably only really room for 2 more. Someone might get left off the bus. I think there's some real competitiveness there. I'm really curious as to how it works out. I'd hate to bet against any of the 3, but I'm also not sure who to bet on, frankly.
That is exactly where I'm at. Now, here's the thing. I just personally, and I think they're all close, someone's got to be 4th, right? I mean, I would love for a situation where you can somehow just combine 2 guys and you can get them all 4 involved. But, like, you even go back to, the 2017 season where you had Bo Scarborough and you had Damian Harris and you had Josh Jacobs and Najee Harris. And it's like Najee barely played for a majority of that season. There wasn't really room for 4. Like, at the end, he kind of started overtaking some guys, but, he wasn't that guy for a majority of the season. He would get in late in games. They would certainly make an effort when he got in the game to get him a lot of carries and opportunities, but he was kind of, there was some concern about him potentially leaving. Like, you talk about a year later, Brian Robinson, I mean, he was not really a huge part of the rotation. He was more of that closer by that point. It was more 3. But even then, you could make 3 in a duel and Jalen Hurts work to an extent, but that's when you were extremely limited as far as the number of passes. So you've got to take it from somewhere. So you're either getting all of your running backs once again. You've now just got 4, and they're all getting 5 or 6 carries apiece, kind of like Justice Haynes and Jam Miller were getting 5 or 6 last year, but you're just replacing that with more pass attempts, or it's 3 guys, or maybe it's even 2 guys. And that's the other element that I want to talk about here. I think it is very possible that you once again, because every every offense for the most part that Kalen DeBoer has been a part of, it's been you've had the Dylan Johnson kind of being the workhorse. In 2019, they had a guy who was a workhorse running back for them. But other than that, it's been like a two-back type of thing. And it was the same thing when Ryan Grubb was the offensive coordinator in 2019 for Fresno State after Kalen DeBoer left to be the OC at Indiana. Same thing. It was a two-back system. Now some of those years you had dual threat quarterbacks who were a part of things, 70 carries, 60 carries, that type of thing, which I think Ty Simpson, that will kind of, 50, 60 carries seems about right for me. But it's like, I think it's going to be hard enough getting 3 involved, much less 4. And that's the kind of point that I want to make. And so someone's got to be left out. And the easy one, because the emotional investment hasn't been made in Draylon Washington, he's kind of the guy that everybody's willing to set aside, but everybody loves Richard Young. And I totally get it. And I like I said, it's my personal preference evaluating them. I would put him 4th. I like Draylon Washington more. I like Daniel Hill more. Doesn't mean I'm going to be correct. And it doesn't mean that means I'm disrespecting or I'm down on Rich Young. Just I'm not as high on Rich Young as I am maybe on these other guys. That's kind of it's a tough call to make with all the talent. It's not a dynamic room. It's not just a loaded up as far as you've got elite backs for 3-4 deep. But I think you've got your clear cut number 1, and then from there you've got a bunch of guys who are in a very similar skill range and can impact this offense in very similar ways.
Yeah, and that's why, I mean, I like how you put that about how Rich Young, you kind of see him as 4th. I sort of see it that way too, because Daniel Hill's bringing you something that Jam doesn't. The Daniel Hill size, the combination of his size and ability to catch the ball makes you want to put him on the field. Dre Washington, he's a senior. There's going to be a veteran savviness to his game. Probably picking up blitzers could be something that he's seen a lot at Louisiana. There's a veteran savviness to his game that's helpful to the team. Probably a senior that's played as much football as him might be really good on special teams too. But I think Rich Young is sort of almost squeezed out there. But I also think game 1 in Tallahassee, he probably is RB2 that day. And like I said, my advice to him, because God knows he's waiting to hear from me, my advice to him, Rich, you need to sort of go off in Tallahassee, because they're gaining on you. They're gaining on you, and they're going to want to see those guys. And one of them's getting squeezed out. I'm rooting for every single one of them. But I think Jam will have a good year. Again, he's not awesome. Anyone that's like, oh, he's awesome. I think if he was awesome, we'd have seen it by now. But he doesn't have to be awesome. He just needs to be really good. And I think he can be really good. I know he's good. Now, can he be really good? I think so.
Yeah. And I posted an article about the running back room last night, and a lot of the responses are like, man, disrespectful to Richard Young, I just don't see it working out this way, because I had Richard Young on the outside looking in, and I can fully acknowledge this is just prediction. There's not 100%, but I'm saying there's a very real possibility that I'm completely wrong. And I love your point about game 1, Rich Young could very well be RB2. And if he capitalizes on those opportunities, then he could keep that job. I'm not locked into this at all. But what I'll say is a lot of people are like, well, this looks like Richard Young's heading to the transfer portal then, or, all this. And that drives me crazy for this reason. I don't think Alabama's running back room is in a position where they have to, they're like deathly afraid of that, to be quite honest. No. You're losing Jam Miller after this year. You're losing Draylon Washington. You could throw Rich Young on there too, and people are like, that's a lot of your backfield gone. But it's like, did AK Deer come in to sit for multiple years, or do they think that once he gets adjusted to the college level, that the number 2 running back from this past cycle could end up elevating himself and getting in that conversation? Okay, is Xavier Crowell coming in as a player that's willing to sit for a couple of years or at least 1 year, or is he a guy who we all think can kind of step on the field and immediately help Alabama's backfield? If Daniel Hill is RB2 and RB1 leaves, do we think Daniel Hill's leaving? That right there could be your top 3. Plus, you've got Barnett coming in as I think, a very underrated player. You can always go to the transfer portal and add a Draylon Washington caliber of player to help out if you need to. So my point is that everybody's deathly afraid, like, oh, if you do it this way, you're losing Richard Young. I don't necessarily agree with that, But even if that ends up being correct, I don't think the coaching staff has to go out of their way and say, well, we think these other guys would be a better combination and would be more effective. But because we don't want to lose Richard Young, we have to be very careful with how we approach it and give him all the opportunities. I just don't think that's going to be the approach. So that shouldn't be the concern for fans.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think we don't need to look at the transfer portal as some sort of a theft, like it's a thief, like that the portal's stealing all these guys. Look, I just know that if you're not a starter, a significant starter on the team, y'all might be surprised at how few guys they would beg not to get in the portal. Now, there might be guys they don't want in the portal. Like, oh man, I don't. Come on now, why don't you hang? But they're not going to beg, unless you're in the starting lineup. They'd be begging for the Ryans of the world, of course. But no, the portal giveth, just like the portal taketh away. When it comes to the majority of the type of players that get in the portal,
Jalen Mbakwe, Danny Lewis, those are clear-cut two guys they wanted back because why? They got him out of the transfer portal.
They got him out of the portal. They wanted
so,
him
I mean,
back.
they definitely wanted him back. I think the one that they didn't want to lose, even though I don't think they super actively tried to get him back out of the portal, I think that was mostly due to what got him in the portal and the offer that was made and the fact that he was, they just didn't have an interest in matching it, was Devontae Smith. I don't actively think they wanted to lose a returning starter. They thought, man, I mean, we're fine with letting him go. Like, they were fine with the way that Deshaun Jones had played and the fact that he was a little bit more available, a little bit more consistently. Devontae had always dealt with injuries. It's like, okay, we're not going to go out of our way to hand him a larger bag or whatever to actively recruit him out of the portal. It's a loss that we don't want, but we're okay with it. Yeah. Like, that's the only one I would say. Everybody else that entered and that they lost, I don't think they were concerned or freaking out about any of them. That was returning starters, guys who had played multiple years, both for Nick Saban and for Kalen DeBoer. Like, they were fine with a lot of these guys leaving.
No, that's right. And again, the portal giveth and the portal taketh away. And I think a lot of coaches have gotten more comfortable with that. And I don't think there's any running back on the team that could leave. They'll want AK Deer to stay. And AK, I think he might be one of these guys, Clint. And this is almost easy to predict. He goes from little use to no use to a major piece in just 1 year. I could see AK Deer being a major piece. And I got excited when you said top three backs next year, 2026, being AK Deer, Daniel Hill, and Xavier Crowell. That would be exciting. And that's not to say we're not pushing Rich Young or Kevin Riley or anybody else in the portal at all. And I hope it works out for all of them. But like you said, there's not a lot of guys that they literally beg or cry or give the blank check to that they don't want seen in the portal.
We want to see it work out for everybody, but it won't.
Heck yeah.
It won't. I mean, it's just, you only got, there's only one. Now you can get, I guess sometimes get two running backs on the field at the same time. You can Jason and Gibbs this if you want to, but Gibbs was also pretty much a wide receiver playing running back in a lot of ways. So that was real easy to do. So, I mean, you can't please everybody. And so, we don't know how it'll work out. I can say that's how it's going to be, or I think that's how it's going to be. I have no idea. Definitely not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to give my honest opinion. And, I think it is a little against the grain to say that the guy who's kind of been running number 2 in drills and stuff is my RB4. And it very well could not work out that way. And that's totally fine. I'm willing to acknowledge that too. Won't nobody have to call me out about it. But let's move on and we'll kind of start getting through some of these others a lot quicker. But wide receivers, a guy that we probably don't need to forget about is Cole Adams. Now, I think their injury to Lassier Brooks probably helped Adams more than anybody because Brooks kind of felt like that. I think he can win outside and he'll play all over the place. But I think primarily he's a slot. He gets banged up and it's like you'll be putting different guys. Jeremy Bernard will probably be your starting slot. Ron Williams can certainly go in there. Rico Scott can play in there. But, having this pure slot, Brooks missing some time might have created some opportunities for Adams. But we've said he was certainly a part of this conversation. But he's made some plays. And then Isaiah Horton continues to make plays downfield. That was the two biggest takeaways that I had when it came to the wide receiver room from the scrimmage. What about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, there's a lot of reason to be excited about that wide receiver group. I think at wide receiver, you can be in a great position if your best couple of guys are really, really good And I think Alabama's got that because I think Ryan Williams is really, really good. And Jeremy Bernard and Isaiah Horton are awfully close to that. You know, they're if Ryan's really, really good, they're really good. But you can also have a better situation if you have a great depth of contributors. Alabama's got both. They're really, really good at that starting group. And then there's a depth to contributors that's outstanding in that room between Cole Adams, who can make a big play, Rico Scott, who sort of played his way into the discussion of whether he belongs in that top three. Jalen Hale is a guy that's really stood out to me. I watched a wide receiver drill the other day on the video. It's probably might be video that you took, or from the practice fields, watching wide receivers in drills. And I told myself, okay, you don't know who any of these guys are. Just watch it. The guy that stood out to me was Jalen Hale. Like, there's a smoothness and, boy, great hands. The ball just disappears into his hands. Another trick that I know scouts like is listening to a guy catch a football. And when it doesn't make a sound, that's your guy. That's Jalen. That's Jalen Hale. Mbakwe's a playmaker. Brooks has been missing a lot of fall camp, it's just a deep group of contributors along with stars in the start. It's as good a situation as possible, and it's going to be a tremendous help to a new quarterback and Ty Simpson to have multiple guys he can trust and rely on out there.
I just think that the combination of factors with the wide receivers, man, like Ryan Williams is going to command so much attention, and I think Jeremy Bernard is like the volume type of player, the physical receiver, the one that, like, I think from a target standpoint, he's going to be number 2. But what I think that's going to do is I think that's going to create some insane opportunities for Isaiah Horton. And so we kept hearing in all of these, in the go back and think about some of the highlight clips they've posted from practice back in the spring. It was Isaiah Horton making a play downfield, and then you hear about these scrimmages. And once again, it's like one of the things that I heard, and I want to say Kalen DeBoer, even when he was talking about Isaiah Horton, I remember the thought came into my, I don't remember exactly how he phrased it, but it made me think he was talking about, Isaiah Horton made his play like it was singular. But what I did hear from somebody was it was an explosive play downfield. And so I just keep hearing this in all of these settings. And the last time I can remember hearing this, and I don't want people to think I'm putting them on the same level, but it was Jameson Williams, where it was like this constant, we hear J-Mo had another explosive play in the scrimmage, or we hear J-Mo had another. I mean, you go back to the A-Day practice, the one where, it gets thrown up to Isaiah Horton and he goes up and gets it, like another play downfield. It's like every time these situations happen, he's making these plays that I'm not saying he's going to be number 3 in targets, number 2 in targets, or even number 3. It's possible he's not. But I also think he's going to be a guy who makes a lot of big-time plays and big-time moments. And you talk about Jalen Hale, and I agree he is moving phenomenally. But when I'm watching these wide receiver drills and stuff, the one that just makes it look so effortless, and this is not Ryan Williams, it's not Jimmy Bernard, it is Isaiah Horton. It does not matter what the drill is. He just makes it look easy. And he's been around for a while, so I get it. But the hands, I mean, it seems so effortless with the hands too. I don't know. I don't know what to make of this wide receiver room. It could work out in a number of different directions. Everybody knows I'm really high on Rico Scott. I do think he's wide receiver 4. Do think he's the first guy off the bench. That hadn't changed. But I just think that this wide receiver room is going to be very, very special. Anything else on the receivers before we move on?
No, I don't think so. We'll just throw in that I've heard an NFL scout. I heard an NFL scout, not even discussing Alabama, mention Zay Horton as a guy that he was highly aware of at Miami a year ago. I mean, I know that name might be new to Alabama fans. It is not new to the NFL. They're very aware of Isaiah Horton.
It's interesting because, like, Isaiah Horton, his situation playing with Cam Ward last year in that Miami offense, I don't remember. I guess I could look it up. Really, it'd take me too long probably, but I know that Xavier. I don't even know how to spell Restrepo. Yeah, I didn't want to botch that.
He was the number 1 in targets there.
By far. By far the number 1 in targets. Like, I want to say Isaiah Horton finished 3rd or maybe 2nd in targets.
I think maybe 3rd, and I think they had a high usage tight end too.
Yes,
it was
Arroyo.
way up there. Yeah, Arroyo. He's fantastic. So they had some premier NFL ready talents, or even older than Horton, and I think he might have been 3rd or 4th total in terms of targets and catches, but that's playing with the number 1 pick. And I say all the time, I know I've been high on Ty, and people would say, gosh, where was Jimmy so excited about Ty? Where's he getting this from? Isaiah Horton just played with Cam Ward.
That's right.
Carson Beck's coming in, and Isaiah Horton, who has a pro career on the line, says, well, I want to play with Ty Simpson. So it's not just me. It's Zay.
I love it. I mean, you said 3 words of that sentence, and I knew exactly where you were taking it. I was like, this is brilliant, because it's true. This guy had his pick of the litter. I promise you, he could have probably went anywhere and played with anybody, because you could never have enough receivers, and he's clearly willing to go to a pretty stacked, loaded wide receiver room and compete.
Right where he was, and it was all right. It was going well for him where he was, with Carson Beck coming in behind a good offensive line.
This wasn't Jermaine Burton going from Stetson Bennett to wanting to play with Bryce Young. This wasn't stepping up to the guy who everybody expected to go number 1. This was a guy who had just played with the number 1, and he had his pick of the litter, including a good quarterback coming in. And he said, no, I want to go play with my boy Ty. I want to go play with my guy that's going to get benched. I mean, is that what he was saying? If he really believed that, probably wouldn't have come. So, yeah, I mean, that's another excellent point. As far as the tight ends, the big thing that Kalen DeBoer mentioned was very consistent. They're not making a lot of explosive plays, but as far as using them and, as far as the motion within the offense, creating some different opportunities, I've said a lot. This offense, the ways that the tight ends can help you as far as creating horizontal space and vertical space and being able to attack the seams and be, kind of like last season where you're, it's timely plays where you lull the defense to sleep, you get their attention going one way, and then you got tight ends who can capitalize on that. You'll still have those elements in the offense, but I think you'll get a little bit more than that. I am somewhat concerned with the blocking, because that was a big question mark. We knew that the catch first, Josh Cuevas, was going to be primarily, tight end 1. We know that, he's not the blocker of a CJ Dupree or a Robbie Utes, but I was kind of hoping that we'd hear more. I don't know. Is it Danny Lewis? Is it, Brody Dalton? Is it Jack Samarco? Is it, one of the freshmen, a Caleb Edwards or Marshall Pritchett? Like, I have no idea. More than likely, it'll either be Dalton or Lewis. But that's one element where it's like you need to continue to get solid blocking. You don't have to get CJ Dupree and Robbie Utes, but you got to get, good blocking. And Kalen DeBoer specifically mentioned short yardage and goal line situations. That is one concern that I would say that I have about this room. And it's not that they don't have it on the roster, just I don't think they've shown it yet.
Yeah, my thing at tight end right now, if I have a concern, is I've always thought throughout the whole offseason that the top 2 guys would be Josh Cuevas and Danny Lewis. Josh as the pass catcher, Danny Lewis as the blocker. But they seem to be banged up, both of them. I'm not sure that either one of them's 100%. And if they can't go, then you're depending on either a transfer from Troy, and I know that's kind of a glass half empty way to say that, and I kind of did that for effect on purpose. Just, it's a transfer from Troy is kind of next up, or a redshirt freshman that you saw this spring and that you like, and Jay Lindsey's going to be a really good player, I think, down the road, but you went and got transfers because you weren't sure that Lindsey would be an SEC starting level player this fall, or it's a freshman. I'm just saying, if Cuevas and Lewis are banged up to the point that they're not as effective, this could be a little bit of a sore spot, because I think they would like to have tight ends they depend on. I would say a dark horse emerging here from as they say, sources close to the program. Watch for Marshall Pritchett here, who's probably about the last guy you would have guessed out of the group to be this noisy this fall, because, true freshman, hurt in the spring. Marshall just has a makeup to him. He reminds me, I think Andrew Bone said it first, so I want to give him some credit because he said it first that I saw. But Marshall reminds me of Miller Forrestall in a way. And you know what Miller Forrestall did as a true freshman? Started games, played with the ones. And he wasn't recruited any more highly than Marshall Pritchett. In fact, was even a little smaller. And he still got out there. He found a way because he's a real football player. I think Marshall Pritchett could end up being maybe a saving grace there at tight end for Alabama if Danny Lewis and Josh Cuevas aren't 100%. If they are, then I think those are the 2 that eat up most of the oxygen in the room.
Yeah, and I've heard about Marshall Pritchett as well. I think he's getting some opportunities, and it's not, the thing with me is I've kind of assumed like Josh Cuevas has kind of got that move H tight end on lock, and then he'll be the primary guy where he'll have to play in line quite a bit if you're the primary. But anytime there's 12 personnel and move opportunities, that's their top guy. So a lot of what I thought Marshall Pritchett would do well kind of conflicts with that. So I thought he would have the most difficult path. Now with Cuevas missing time, that is creating some opportunities for Marshall Pritchett to be used, because I don't know that they have another guy. I think it's Cuevas. I think it's Pritchett. I think you can use other guys in that type of role, but I think that they're the most suited for it. And so that could be a situation where he is getting some added opportunities. But from everything I'm hearing, he's taking advantage. So I don't necessarily know or think you're going to get Marshall Pritchett and Josh Cuevas on the field at the exact same time. Could be wrong on that, but I think Marshall Pritchett's kind of carving himself out a role, whether that be as a key depth piece where he's kind of ready to rock and roll if Cuevas continues to be banged up or something happens. But that is something to definitely monitor. As far as the offensive line, do you have any thoughts or concerns? I've obviously had heard that Keon Keeley had a pretty good day, and there was some talk about Wilkin Formby being on the receiving end of some of that. And of course, I'm sure that this has got fans overly concerned. Are you concerned about Wilkin Formby, or what are your thoughts on this offensive line with the fact that Jaden Roberts, we now understand why he has maybe been running with the second team more, and that is the fact that he's not 100%, even though the way that Kalen DeBoer phrased that when he said he was out, he said middle of the week is kind of the way he painted it. Like that's when he got injured or banged up and why he missed. If that's the case, then we were seeing Jaden Roberts already working with the second team. So this was after that. The timeline's fuzzy. I don't know what to make of it, but do you have any concerns with this Alabama offensive line?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have stars at center and left tackle. We shouldn't have any concerns there. That you should hope that you're going to get all-star play out of those two spots. At right tackle, Wilkin Formby, I think you're going to see a better Wilkin Formby than we saw a year ago. I think that's really all you can ask. It's a developmental sport. That position is the most developmental of all. I think it's only reasonable for us to ask Wilkin Formby to be one year better than he was a year ago. Are you going to be 1 year better? I think he is, and I think that'll be good enough. Is he going to play like the best right tackle in the league? Probably not, but he's a redshirt sophomore with his best football ahead of him. I have a level of confidence there. He's not like he's being pushed. It's not like they're saying, oh, you better get Mike Carroll or Jackson Lloyd ready or Olas, who's also been good this spring and fall. I think Wilkins sort of got it on lockdown over there, but I'm only expecting him to be, again, 1 year better than he was as a redshirt freshman. The guard spot looks like a rotation to me, which is both good and bad. It's good in the sense that you got three guys that you trust. They obviously trust Cam Dewberry, Geno Vandermark, and Jaden Roberts. There's some trust there. But let's also be completely honest. If one of the three was great, he wouldn't be rotating with anybody. I mean, they're rotating as a way to keep them fresh, to keep them healthy, and kind of limit their snaps. I think if you had a Tyler Booker, for instance, that was back, he wouldn't be rotating with anybody. He would just be the left guard, just like Proctor's the left tackle and Brailsford's the center. But I think guard is a fair, if you're looking for an issue, if you're looking for concern, to me, it would be the three-man rotation at guard, indicating that none of the three are particularly great, or they wouldn't be sharing their spot.
Yeah, I think they're all going to be good, but I agree with you. I think they got some depth there, so you have to feel pretty good about it. But, what's interesting is that from everything that I've heard and a lot from what I've seen, it hadn't been Olas Alinen running with the second team consistently. It's more so been when the second team goes out there, a lot of it is Jackson Lloyd at left tackle, Michael Carroll at right tackle. But then Olas is he's being sprinkled in at guard. He's being sprinkled in at tackle. And that includes coming in sometimes with the first team at left tackle and Caden Proctor kind of getting a breather. So it's does that mean that he's ahead of Jackson Lloyd? I don't know. It's like they're preparing him for a Swiss Army type of role. And I've kind of assumed that meant he was going to be first guy off the bench, if something happens to a tackle. But now I'm starting to wonder, just kind of the mainstays. And there's been, some practices where it's Olas is working at left tackle, and then you got Jackson Lloyd and Michael Carroll kind of rotating with the second team at right tackle. So I'm not saying it hadn't happened. I just I don't know what that's going to look like. I'll be curious to see what that looks like. But either way, there will be questions if any of those guys have to come in. Doesn't mean they're not talented or can't get the job done. It's just a lot of it's youth and just not knowing really what to expect from Olas, especially as a tackle. Like seen it a little bit, but just don't know. But yeah, I will say this from everything I heard with the offensive line, and Kalen DeBoer brought this up early on in that scrimmage, they were creating some holes, man. They were getting the push that you want. And I think this coaching staff feels really good about the offensive line and how it's progressing. That's kind of been the vibe based off of people I've talked to. So, we'll see. They there's been in recent years where maybe the coaching staff felt pretty good about the offensive line and it didn't work out that way. So that not automatically mean it'll be good, but I know that they feel good about it. And, it's just, it's like with anything, a lot of times you don't know in these scrimmages, should I feel good about this or should I not feel good about the defensive line, allowing being gashed with some runs. I'll say this, there's two things defensively that I know that I can count on, and I don't think it's gone anywhere. And that's being able to stop the run, especially between the tackles, and then being able to generate turnovers. So when I hear that the offense isn't turning the football over, I'm not panicking about the defense because I know that's going to be there. I'm excited about the offense being able to avoid the turnovers. That's where I choose to go with it. When it comes to stopping the run, Alabama's offense being able to move them off the football and creating some lanes for them to run, I'm not panicking about the run game and just assuming, man, they still got Tim Keenan in there. James Smith was out for this scrimmage, so they were a little bit smaller. I'm guessing Edric Hill probably was the guy who was with the first team, and he's a little bit smaller, needs to be more of a situational player. He can play 3 downs, but I think he's more of a situational player than a 3-down guy. And that probably created some opportunities, but I'm more so encouraged by the fact that the offense was able to generate some of that than I am concerned about the defense with those two things. Would you agree or disagree?
No, totally agree with that. And the fact that the offensive line is showing out, we know so much of that defensive front six, however you want to put it, front six, front seven, so much of those guys are returning stars. Overton, Keenan, James Smith till he was out. The 3 senior inside linebackers, Quay Russaw at Wolf. If the offensive line's having success against them, that's a good sign.
That is always a good sign. Yeah. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? I know we haven't really covered defense. That really didn't get a whole lot as far as like individual performers and stuff. It was a lot of the focus has been on the offense. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that just surprisingly, the offense is kind of ahead of the defense, which I think just kind of floored everybody. But I'm not worried about the defense. Like, I'm not worried about all this stuff coming together. I just think that the offense, I'm more encouraged about that because I think that's the one that's got to take that big next step. Did hear some good things about Luke Metz. I think from a linebacker perspective, have no idea kind of where they go post Nakai Hill Green or Justin Jefferson as far as like who's that linebacker for. Could be QB Reese, could be Caden Jones. Thought Caden Jones, watching him go through some drills and stuff, he's fluid, man. He's like a really long guy, big guy, more of an edge rushers type of build. But, man, just him dropping and stuff, he looks pretty smooth and fluid going through that. So that's something to mention. Anything else you want to talk about as far as the defense?
No, just real confident in that group. That was a top 10 defense. At the end of last season, that was one of the top 10 defenses in the country. Most of them are back. And now another full year learning Kane Womack's defense, which is similar, but also radically different than the Nick Saban defense. They had to learn that. That's why the whole first half of last season was a little bit of a bumpy ride. But by the end of the year, that was a top 10 defense. Most of the pieces return. I have a lot of confidence in that group.
Yeah, I do too. And granted, I will admit, James Smith was recently my biggest breakout player on defense. Just think that his importance to his position, the talent that he brings to the table, how important that position is as far as providing a complementary pass rush. I just think he's got all the makings to be a superstar. What I will say is that him missing this scrimmage, didn't really know that he was banged up. Maybe I'd missed something, but I didn't know that. I know that he missed the spring due to injury, or he was limited in the spring. And so it's like, that's like the one position where I just don't think you can afford a lot of injuries. I like the group as long as they stay healthy, but if it falls off. So that is something to at least monitor. But the defense overall, assuming James Smith is back, which Kalen DeBoer said he didn't, it's not long-term, but it is something to monitor. Jimmy, anything else before we hop out of here, brother?
I don't think so. Just excited that football's starting. Appreciate you having me back on the show, man.
I absolutely appreciate you hopping on here with me for over an hour. And I feel like we could have easily turned this into a 2-hour thing, but man, just, yeah, we could sit here and talk all day, but I appreciate you as always, brother. And we will definitely have to do this again soon.
Escape to Pearl River Resort.